Okay, so as Facebook teases me and says we're setting up for your meeting, undoubtedly we are live right now. So, hey, this is a combination effort here. This is Finney Helps and the Free Will Project coming together. It's like you put enough coolness together, you get some kind of a nuclear-like explosion, right, Chet?
Right, right, like a peanut butter jelly explosion.
Mm, peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I
So
don't
I
know where
might,
that came from.
oh, yeah, well, the subconscious. So I'm Mike Finney, and I do the Finney Helps show, so to speak. And Chet, you are.
Yeah, I'm Chet Gaines. Like maybe a month or two ago, I started a thing I call the Free Will Project. Just trying to have some conversations with people online concerning, the what is free will and what does science say about it, and how does our understanding of these issues affect our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been watching your videos, and I'm impressed. And I'm also concerned. And so this is one of the reasons that I came on
Good, good. I
because,
concern a lot of people, so you're not alone.
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I'm impressed with the thoughtfulness and the fact that people like yourself are thinking about people that are not yourself. So like I caught wind of discussions around, the justice system, what do we do with criminals, how that relates to free will, and of course the discussions about, is free will real? Is it an illusion? Those kinds of things. And so one of those things that I was screaming at and while watching the video some, because it's like watching TV, right? They can't hear you, and it's like, but have you defined free will? All right, well, this one has a definition. A lot of them have definitions. Awesome. Um, but one thing I do like to do is I like to imagine that I'm meeting someone and I don't know their educational background at all, and I'm going to assume kind of a lowest common denominator thing, right?
Sure.
So one thing that I do on Finney Helps, we could roll with this or not, it's up to you, but any acronyms we use, we expand at least the first time.
Yeah,
Any
yeah, definitely.
terminology, the same kind of thing. So even though I may know a thing, like compatibilism, I'm gonna play dumb. I'm gonna say like, huh, wait, what's compatible, etc. Which I don't know if we'll ever use that term, but that's just an example, right?
Sure.
Most of the time on Finney Helps, the phrases are like gamification, meditation, things of that nature. And I think what's really interesting is there's a strong intersection between certain meditative practices and the experiences that you get from that, and
Sure.
then free will to and then what do you do once certain things have happened? So let me I it's one of those things where it's like we didn't decide ahead of time, who's driving this conversation, so to speak, and maybe it's just we're both driving. But where would you like to start at? Because I know I shared some topic items with you that are of interest to me, but it's not all about me; it's about the we. So there you go.
No, yeah, I actually I made a copy of that list and have it on screen. But the thing you said there, just like I don't know, the intersection of like meditation and subjective experience and questioning various aspects of your identity and your subjective
Right,
experience, like that's very fascinating stuff. And I think a lot of times that's a difficult conversation to have with people. That's not something that you can just bring up while you're standing in line at the grocery store or something like that. So
right.
um, So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That I feel like you took us in a direction there. I want you to make good on it. Like,
Awesome. All right. Well, so one of the things, like, for example, with meditation is if a person ever gets deep into meditation, one of the warnings that is given to the new meditator, right, is that you need to have an instructor. You need to have someone get you through some certain rough spots. And the rough spots are going to come up as a natural growth process of meditating. Because, like, when you're meditating, like, let's say we're talking about the mental focus exercise, mindfulness meditation, you're going to recognize that you are not your thoughts and that you can observe your thoughts. And then what you do with that, that's a whole other topic. And then there's another meditation practice, which I don't teach for good reason, although someday I probably will again. And that is losing the sense of self. And there's some beneficial things that can come from that. But that, for those who aren't ready, can be extremely destabilizing.
I imagine it could be like hard to get through the day if you don't have a sense of self. Like it can be challenging to do like routine things.
Well, so to expand on that, because I did promise expanding on things. So we the sense of self, as we know, is like subject, object. I am I, and there's a thing over there. And if you lose the sense of self, you fall into basically it's a cliche, but it's true, where it's like you feel one with the universe and everything, right? Which sounds very woo-woo, etc. But if you are in the world and you lose the sense of you, there's just the world,
Right.
right? And then that can be extremely liberating. And there are other things that can be extremely liberating if you break such illusions, but you got to be ready. Now, whether a person believes that free will is a real thing or not, I know what it's like to lose the sense of self. And I also know what it's like to set aside the sensation of free will. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want people to learn how to load a gun, aim a gun,
This is
and
getting
fire
dark.
a gun without even knowing, what they're doing, right?
Right. Maybe there's some like some safety lessons involved with
Yeah,
like proper gun handling or something like that.
there absolutely is. And it's funny because when I bring up the example of a gun or whatever, and I'm talking to someone who's actually like from Norway or Germany or so, they're like, "You Americans and your guns."
Yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
right.
That's we have a unique situation here as far as like the rest of the first world's considered.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or like, my friend Chris John from the Netherlands, he's like, "Finney, why are you bringing up guns again?" Like, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
what we do. We talk about guns.
they're kind of a cultural staple here.
Yeah, yeah.
For better or worse.
All right. So yeah, it's just it's similar to the meditation thing, where it's like if you're going to go deep on this, you need a guide. If you are suffering from a certain mental condition that hasn't been properly treated with the assistance of a professional, it may not be proper for you to meditate until you at least consult with a professional that can tell you whether or not it's safe for
Right.
you to meditate. they won't let people on retreats unless you are of sound mind and are not at risk. And if you are at risk, then you can still potentially meditate, but you need to go talk to a professional because, there's just certain accommodations that may be needed. It's similar to fitness where it's like, like picking exercise. Push-ups may not be appropriate for you, but there may be other exercises you can do with the help of a professional to give you the same kind of strength. It's just, we're all different people and we have different needs. So
Sure.
kind of a
Sure.
deal.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the free will, in my opinion.
I think that's very interesting. That's
Yeah.
yeah, maybe some kind of precautionary principle is worth considering, and especially when you're talking about your own mental health and things like that. It's
There's a
worth.
Mr. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you go ahead.
But I was say there's a Mr. Harris that we both know. I won't say his first name because he triggers so many people from his past adventures.
He's, I have mixed feelings about him as well, but
um,
I
but
have
yeah,
mixed feelings about a lot of people.
sure, including ourselves.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mr. Harris points out that if the discussion about free will, if the exploration about free will is destabilizing in any way, this is a quote from him, please stop. Go talk to a professional, a mental health professional, if you want
Right.
to pursue this further, but yet are feeling, a destabilization, something that is not working for you. And sometimes, you could be mentally healthy and such in all the ways, but at the same time, it takes a while for something to sink in.
Hmm.
Like when a person is meditating and they have lost the sense of self, heck, if they can even observe that a thought is separate from who they are,
Right.
the fact that a thought is observable, that's mind blowing.
Right.
That
You're
phrase
not
means something. Mind blowing.
yeah, no, I think this is definitely like an issue that we have, like I think with our culture especially, but it's probably just kind of a human issue generally, is that sort of ego identification, that like
Right.
you are your cognitive processes, and it's like, well, in a sense you kind of are, but you're also like everything else that's going on with you, and you're also
Cognitive? What's cognitive?
you know that
I do know, but
that stuff in your head. It's a technical
thinking,
definition.
cognitive, the thinking
Sure.
stuff.
Sure, thinking stuff.
Sure.
Stuff that happens in the gray matter. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, you're also like, and I take, you were bringing up the sense of like oneness and unification with everything, and that can be like I don't know, a lot of people take that as sort of like a wooey metaphor, but I take that very literally. Like my understanding of behavior is that you have like your biological predispositions and your environmental influences, and uh, your your behavior is kind of this dance between those two things. You just kind of emerge out of it, and even though I do have those subjective experiences of like uh, will and self and whatnot, um, they do very much just seem to be a piece of that puzzle, and they're not necessarily the most important piece, right? And
Yeah, so to expand on that, to make sure I'm mentally on the same page as you,
sure.
like a piece of the puzzle being everything, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure I was, yeah, the way that Jeff Warren, I went, yeah, who, it's funny in the prior conversation that's happening an hour ago, Jeff Warren's a co-author of this book. You can't see it. Dan Harris and Jeff Warren, Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, a 10% how-to book. It's a good book. Jeff Warren talks about that sense of the local expression of reality.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like you are acknowledging that there's a local expression, but it's also part of everyone and everything. And that moment when you can drop the sense of self and any other things that you wish to drop, if you want to drop the sense of free will, that can be liberating in certain ways. And for Jeff Warren, he points out that dropping the sense of self, it enables you to drop that desire to, I must protect myself, I must protect this local expression, it's all
Mm-hmm.
about me. And then it's like, well, yeah, self-preservation is important, and you can open your mind to other possibilities too.
Right. Right. Definitely. I think we don't have enough of that expanded concern, especially like once again in our particular society. We
Right.
don't have enough concern about social well-being, and
Yeah.
we're individualism. I don't think it's inherently like a bad thing, but I do think there's like toxic versions of it, and we
Right.
we
Yeah.
kind of love our toxic individualism in the U.S., where it's not only about my particular well-being, but it's also about like me doing better than others and making sure they're below me, and uh,
Right. So there's
this
competition that's
yeah,
like happening.
definitely. Um, just to throw something out there, one of my kind of my favorite academics is a guy named Alfie Kohn, who does education research, and he has a lot of work on competition.
Okay.
Uh, and his conclusion, which is feels radical to a lot of people, but I think it's well supported, is that competition is pretty much bad. Is if we're concerned about our health and well-being, basically we take a hit to that anytime we're engaged in competitive behavior. Um, Now, that's not to say competition is the worst thing. Like,
Right.
there's obviously options we could take besides competition that would harm ourselves even more. But once again, and
We could really screw that up even worse, is what
yeah,
I just heard.
yeah, exactly.
True.
Um,
Never
but
underestimate how bad we can make things. It's a fact. Go on.
absolutely. Um, but yeah, we have a big cultural bias towards competition, and competition
Yeah.
always being a good thing, and that's worth being skeptical about, and actually like digging into the relevant information, and asking yourself some hard questions. That's another one of those things that's like,
Yeah.
uh, in our society we have a lot of these uh, kind of social myths that we run on, and they are worth questioning. And at the same time, like you point out, it can be difficult and even destabilizing to question these things. And a lot of
Right.
times you want to find some support to help you through that. And
Yeah.
I don't. That's one thing I've probably thus far in my conversations I've probably failed to suggest enough. Is my whole project kind of jumped into the middle of the free will discussion,
Mhm.
without a lot of this preliminary stuff, because that's kind of where I assumed, if I even have an audience, that's kind of where I assumed they would start at. Um, but it's
They
very
would
good to
start.
kind of go.
Let's
I'm sorry.
stop for a second. What you're saying is, you said that's where they'll start at. Expand on that, please. What are they starting at?
Kind of with some foundational information already in place. Like
Mhm.
I didn't start at like the 101 level with my discussions. I kind
Right.
of started. Uh, I mean, for the most part, I've kind of let whoever I'm talking to uh, set the tone, set the
Sure.
level of the conversation, and because I'm pretty comfortable with the conversation at whatever level, but
Right.
but yeah, it's very good to cover kind of the basic stuff, kind of make sure you're you're concerned about your own well-being in the process of
Right.
talking about, you know, uh, difficult subjects that involve just the fundamental aspects of the way you perceive the world. If those things shift and, you know, you're not caring for yourself, it could really affect other things. You know, it can affect your health overall. So
Uh,
it is really important. I'm really glad you bring that up. That's
Well,
something
thank you.
I think my conversations have been missing.
You just reminded me of something key that I wanted to do, and I wanted to define free will and separate that out from free choice. So, a way that I explain free will when I do, which is almost never, is that, so say we have a series of events, right? I'm going to label them as A1, B1, C1. Okay. You can actually see them in your mind, little boxes, right? You got the A1 box, the B1 box, the C1 box, right? And here I am. Here's a person, local expression of it. No, it's not kidding. It's true, but so A1, B1, C1, all the things that have happened to this person before. Now, this person, let's say, has a choice. Are they going to choose D1 or are they going to choose D2? Right? So it's a combination of events and decisions. So as far as free will goes, the thinking is, and you can say the more formal definitions and such as you wish, which actually would be welcome. But the free will, the common free will notion is that the thinking that even though A1, B1, C1 have happened, if they happen again, I could choose D1 or D2 differently, right? So it's like A1, B1, C1 happen. Well, who knows if that person's going to choose D1 or D2? And so that's that concept of free will, where it's like, it's all free, right? Are they going to eat the apple or are they not going to eat the apple? Stay
Right.
tuned. But as far as like free choice, that is just the notion of I'm at a moment in my life where it's like A1, B1, C1 have happened. No one is forcing me with a gun to my head to choose D1 or D2. Um, Whether or not free will is real or not, I'm not being led down a very obvious avenue, you know, with again the gun to the head where it's like there's not really a choice. It's like you're gonna take D2 because I got the gun to your head, and yeah, don't know why we're even talking about D1.
Kind of a mafia-esque type choice where
Yeah,
an
gotta
offer
have,
you can't refuse.
yeah, got an offer you can't refuse, and you know we had to throw a gun in there as part of the example, right?
Yeah,
Because
America.
yeah, America, that's right. All right, so no offense to anyone who likes to say America in that way. But yeah, a lot of fun images there. So yeah, that's the distinction that I make: free will versus free choice. Uh, but yeah, how would you describe free will, and how would you distinguish it from free choice if I really wanted you to, and I do?
Okay, so what I heard there, I'll try not to mess this up because last time I tried to explain this to a friend, I got a couple words backwards, and I was like, "Oh no," you know.
It's okay. It's a
Um,
conversation.
so the first, so we were talking about the sort of chain of events, and then you have like the divergence at event D
You,
or
you
whatever.
say versions, right? I
the
thought you said virgins. I don't know.
the the
Like, what are you
split.
doing with the
The,
virgins? Just got
not
really
virgins.
weird. Okay. Sorry, go on.
Um, so you have the divergence between D1 and D2. So libertarianism, the libertarian free will, says that if you ran through A, B, and C multiple times, you could pick different Ds. So like it's really you are the driver, right? And you're free to choose D1 or D2.
Yeah.
Um,
Good
so
memory.
that's libertarianism, and that's the I would say that's the common interpretation of what free will means.
Right.
Um, so contrasted to libertarianism, which is an incompatibilist position, which means determinism and free will are two separate issues. So, contrasted from libertarianism, the other incompatibilist position is determinism. Determinism says if you run through A, B, and C multiple times, you're always going to pick the same D. So, whether it's D1 or D2, you're always going to end up with the same choice, the same
Right.
outcome. Um, so, determinism's pretty popular philosophically. Um, not
Yeah,
that
but not
many.
not in the supermarket.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Marketing still assumes we're all libertarians, I guess. I don't know.
Yep.
And then you have, so I describe both of those positions as incompatibilist. Then you have the compatibilist position, which is that free will and determinism are both true.
It's totally
Um,
that commercial. It's like, why not both?
exactly,
Right?
exactly. So some people out there are going, why not both? Um, and so this says something like you were saying with the lack of external pressures, that like, well, as long as no one forced you to pick D1 or D2, that was your free choice, you know. So I would say your distinction between free will and free choice is kind of a libertarianism versus compatibilism type distinction, um, which is good stuff. Um, that's I think what you said is way more accessible than what I said. So
Well, but it's the on ramp, right, to the terminology. I think you did a fantastic job, if I may say, and you would know better than I would as to whether or not you did a fantastic job. To be fair,
I don't think I messed it up. I'll throw in one more position, which
well,
is the
I feel
oh
like we
you got
should go over
something.
the term. No, I feel like we should go over the terms at some point. It's like so far we've covered determinism, compatibilism, incompatibilism. All right, go ahead.
And libertarianism.
And libertarianism.
And so the last position that I'll mention would be hard incompatibilism, uh, which basically says whether the universe is a deterministic process or some kind of indeterministic process with randomness involved or something to that effect. Either way, free will is not happening. And
Right.
this is the position that I've come to most recently. But prior to that, I always thought of myself as a determinist. But I feel like a weakness of determinism is that it does seem that there are some kind of indeterministic features to the universe. And
Mm.
so I think hard indeterminism is a more broad way of just stating that I'm a free will skeptic. That I I myself don't subscribe to the notion of free will, and I feel like it's worth questioning.
Sure.
So
It's the same answer that I gave someone where they said, and this is actually a true story, where they're like, they believe that fairies exist. I'm like, rock on. I haven't met one yet. I'm, it's like, okay, can I depend upon that fairies exist? No. Are they, if they did, are they helping me in life at all? No. All right. I don't care. I literally don't care whether fairies exist or not because apparently they're not doing anything for me. Right? And
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same kind of thing where it's like that uh, pick your thing, unicorns, teapots, whatever. It's like, yeah, unless it's impacting my life, Um, yeah, and so, and I do have a natural curiosity about the universe. I do want to dig deep on things, but yeah, like when it comes to, like you said about accessibility, when you want to make things accessible to people, I have found in my experience, and actually there's an interesting book that offline I could dig up and share with you,
Nice.
um, that talks about this kind of process. But it's like I found that, especially in America, and I'm sure elsewhere too, it's like you have to answer the question, quote, "What's in it for me?" Why should I give a darn about whether free will is an illusion or not?
Hmm.
And why am I even watching this video about people making the distinction between free will and free choice when I could be watching a perfectly good Star Trek episode or something else?
Right. There's a lot of cats on the internet. I haven't seen them all.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a lot of cats. Which, by the way, if people haven't noticed yet, I say this with love, we're geeks. We like Star Trek. We like philosophy. I almost changed majors, by the way, from computer science to philosophy.
Nice.
So
I
I
was
know
I was
that,
a
yeah,
philosophy minor for a period of time, and that ended up getting changed because, like, oh man, the formal process of philosophy is painful.
sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, and I got my minor in psychology, and it's like all I needed was like a class or two more to have it be a double major, but it's like I can't make any money from it. Why? Because you can't make any money apparently, last I checked, with a bachelor's in psychology. You have to
It's
move on to something more. Like you can't pay for your own school, but that's a whole other topic.
right, right, yeah,
I know
yeah.
you're a
We're
real,
about to go into a big tangent there.
yeah, I know you're really into owning things, and yeah, I still want to talk about that right now. But I'm totally trolling you now. I get that. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. All right. So yeah. So in terms of like the question, what's in it for me? I literally had one or more people sit down with me and they say, "Look, Finney, there's a lot of Mikes in the world, so a lot of people just use my last name, but Finney. It's like Finney. We've evolved to ask these kinds of questions. All right, now hey, nice to meet you and all that." And they're like, "What am I thinking?" It's like, "How much of a threat are you?" let's say you haven't done the handshake yet, right? It's because that's answering the question of, "Am I going to kill you?" No, because we're shaking hands, and by now I would have stabbed you, right? So it's like these
Right.
questions.
It's kind of
How much of a threat? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I was just saying, the kind of a ritual that helps us feel more comfortable with each
Yeah.
other. Like handshakes, I forced myself to get comfortable with them, and after COVID, I'll never be comfortable with them again.
Right.
But yeah, handshakes always seem so arbitrary to me, so weird.
It's true. Well, so what's this? When you're waving hello to someone, why do we
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, I don't know. I
Oh,
mean,
come
you
on.
get their attention. I have no objects in my hand. I don't something to that effect.
Come on. Yeah, let's say turn on the anthropologic engine there. It's like, yeah, to your point, if this was a spear, can't see it, this pen, if it was a spear, if it's open, hey,
Yeah,
hey, and we wave it because humans can see motion easier than things that are standing still,
right.
right? So it's like, hey, I'm friendly. I don't have a weapon in my hand. I'm not going to try to kill you. So anyway, the three questions. How much of a threat are you? How much of a help are you? This is after we got past the threat part.
Right.
What
First things
agreements can
first.
we make? I'm sorry, what?
First things first.
Yeah, first things first. Are you a threat? Are you going to help? Okay, cool. You're going to help. What agreements can we make? How can I rely on you? If I can rely on you, we might become friends. We might have common goals. That kind of a thing.
I like it.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like with free will. It's like, okay, there's this concept called free will. Hypothetically, let's say that I've been raised under a certain religion, right? There's a lot of religions out there that, as part of the deal, an axiom, as some people might say, a foundation that we agree on. It's like, if you belong to this religion, you believe that free will is true and that I can choose D1 or D2 no matter what has happened in my life. And
Right.
so if you're going to be hardcore in that religion, which interestingly enough, I discovered that not all people are 100% hardcore in whatever religion they belong to. That was a learning process for me. um, let's just say I've had some very pragmatic people in my life, and they helped me understand that there's, between black and white, there are shades of gray. Oh
That
my
sounds like a
God.
good thing. Yeah.
It is a good thing. Um, yeah. So that's a whole other story. But in any case, yeah, if people are going to take on this thing of, do I have free will or not? And if they want to discover subjectively for themselves, setting aside the sensation of free will, whether it's true or not, that's up for other people to decide, to discuss. You can continue your videos about whether free will exists or not. I'm not here to say whether it exists or not. I can say with 100% certainty that the sensation of free will, the sensation of being an I, can definitely be set aside,
Mhm.
whether or not they're true. I'm not saying one way or the other as part of this conversation. If you do set those things aside, I will tell you what's in it for you. And this is something that was taught to me. When I set those things aside, you can lose the sense of guilt. You're still accountable for what you do. Like, there's a choice for me to make. Right? I'm choosing D1 or D2. And as a result of making that choice, there are consequences. And then as a result of those consequences, I may do something that inadvertently damages myself or others, and I will feel it. And that feeling is a message. But once the message is received, take the lesson and then notice that thought of sorrow and go, okay, I get it. You don't have to tell me twice or a billion times. I screwed up. Got it.
It,
And then
it
you
pays
move
to be
on.
a it pays to be a quick learner. Like,
Well, there's a meditation instructor. They used to be called gurus, right? There's a meditation instructor. His name is George Mumford, Mumford. He taught Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan how to meditate. And he says it's perfectly fine after you've done something to do a post play reflection. And so it's like, okay, instead of doing negative self-talk, it's like, all right, here's what happened and what would I do differently next time? Got it. This is what I'm going to do differently next time. And I would even challenge a person to where, if they can, practice that if they anticipate that thing coming up again, right? Because then it's like it's like a fire drill, that kind of a deal. So there's a tip. It doesn't always work, but yeah, it's a thing. Works in job interviews, works in communication with couples, et cetera, et cetera. So you keep doing it until it gets into your muscle memory, almost essentially, right? And then it just becomes second nature.
I like that.
Thank you. That's what we do. Finney helps. It's part of that life optimization, and the framework finding is the fact that you practice what you want to become, and so it becomes a part of you. Anyway, So, but yeah, that's the thing with the whole setting aside the sensation of free will and the sense of I, where it's like, I recognize that it's not all in my hands. And this is the concept of equanimity. There's a lot of variables at play that have made me who I am through these external forces. It's like what Mr. Harrison says, you didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick where
Right.
you were born, right? Like we all understand those things. Stuff's happened. That's the
Hmm.
work safe version of that. Instead of saying the other S word besides stuff. And then you're like, okay, I'm at this point. I did this thing. I've learned either good or bad. It was either a good thing or a bad thing that I did. So therefore, I'm going to internalize that and move on and just drop the guilt. It's like, yeah, message received. And so, yeah, the free will setting aside and the dropping the I can be useful tools.
Right. Right. I like that. I would say, just to kind of expand on it, do something with that. Uh,
Yeah, I went on for a while.
no, no, you're good. I like it. Good stuff.
Thank you.
What I would say is like, that extends, like, as much as that applies to yourself, your own personal experience, um, it applies to others. And I am not at all perfect at this or even like good at it, but I do. It does help me to recognize that, blaming others for events is, uh, kind of equally useless. Like, if you have a problem with the way something happened, it certainly makes sense to like let someone else know, what your feelings are or what your perceptions were. Um, but it doesn't really make sense to think of, someone else's behavior as representative as some sort of like fundamental failure in their character. Or, I've mentioned it before, in previous discussions. There's a concept in psychology called the fundamental attribution error, and it's this notion that, you attribute to, the individual some kind of like, uh, specific, like, inherent failing that could better be described by circumstance or by, some other variable. People are, uh, different based off of, whatever circumstance they're put in, what stress levels they're feeling at the moment. There's
Right.
all kinds of variables that go into, behavioral outcomes. So it doesn't make sense to like go hard on someone as like some sort of like inherent, failure. And unfortunately, there's a lot of worldviews out there that promote some kind of like, I don't know, some kind of failed human nature, or some
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, inherent failure in people that we will never. They draw this dichotomy between, we'll never be perfect, so therefore we are, in some sort of like fallen state or something like that. And I don't think this dichotomy is helpful to actually
Right.
understanding, who people are and where behavior comes from. And, uh, it.
Dichotomy needs to be expanded on based upon some people I've come across. So,
Oh, sure.
like when I mentioned black or white and I see things as shades of gray, that's
There you
turning a
go.
dichotomy. Yeah, it's turning a dichotomy situation into let's get real.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a pattern in our thinking that we like to split things into binaries, into like, off or on, black and white, up or down. And
Yeah,
yeah, in reality, you know, binaries, dichotomies do exist, but, not that often. Uh,
yeah,
a
and
lot of
sometimes we
times.
force it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
with binary computers. I mean, the 0 and 1, the on and off, is actually an abstraction of different voltage levels.
Oh,
Where
there you
it,
go. Ooh.
yeah, the one is you've reached a certain voltage level in the hardware, and so they just call that a one in the computer hardware. And then when it drops below a certain level, they call that a zero. And so they've abstracted from reality to force a zero or a one.
Man, today
Yep,
I learned.
there you go.
I did not know that. I did know what binary was, but yeah, I had no clue it comes from voltage, which is not uh, binary, but it's like a spectrum, like a scale.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
fascinating.
I might have the terminology wrong a little bit in terms of voltage. That's how it was explained to me. But yeah, definitely it's the human beings is what we do, right? We abstract from reality to simplify things for our brains, our understanding.
Oh
So yeah,
yeah, and it's it's forgivable because it's
yeah,
necessary. Like we
yes,
can't really manage things as they are. We have to manage them as we perceive them.
right.
Uh, so
That's why
yeah.
most of our thinking is subconscious. Like we have a fraction of the stuff that goes on to our brain. There's only a fraction of it that comes to our consciousness, and the rest of it is subconscious, unconscious thinking.
Oh yeah, I think one of my favorite academic figures, George Lakoff. He's a very influential linguist. I think he says it's like maybe a couple percent of our total cognition we're aware of, and the rest of it's like stuff that
Right.
passes under the radar.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Yeah, and it's circling back on thinking about others. Those questions that I mentioned in terms of threat assessment, help assessment. Okay, what kind of a long-term agreements can we have? Once once that's kind of established, once a person has made peace with the notion of, all right, this thing's real to me or this thing's not real to me, and this is how free will can help or not help, or setting aside the sensation of such, then they're typically in a position to say, huh, maybe this would be helpful for others. Maybe I do need to change my outlook on life, because if it is true, and it is, that there's a lot of variables in life that impact us in all kinds of ways. Like if that's happening to me, okay, that's happening to other people. So, the criminal system, people in jail, like what some people don't quite get is the fact that they may end up in jail even though they're innocent.
Right.
And and in fact, that can be part of the process, because if there's a serious enough charge against a person, you are put someplace until the trial, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so this, and I know we don't want to get into it, and you cover it in your other videos, but this notion of, all right, so we're going to lock this person up and they deserve what they get. I don't, when people say, I don't care if they're going to be abused or whatever, it's like that could end up being anyone, right? Because they've been accused of a crime or something. They're now put in this cell or whatever. And then it's like, yeah, I know that I would want to be treated like a human being and not abused.
That's a good exercise in basic empathy. That's hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Where it's like a very common response that I've heard from people in the past are like, well, I'm not a criminal. I'll never go to jail. And then I'm like, you don't have to be a criminal to be in jail.
Right. Right. And if you look at how legal systems have operated throughout history, who is
Yeah.
and who isn't a criminal um, is a fairly subjective thing. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, there's some behaviors we don't want occurring in society. We don't want people like
Sure.
harming each other for no reason. We don't, there's certain things that we don't want allowed for everyone's benefit. But also, there's a lot of people who have ended up behind bars, including many of our, historical heroes,
Yep.
unjustly. And
Yeah.
it's worth asking how that happened. Was that actually like a net benefit
Yeah.
to be basically kidnapping and restraining people who we held as like moral leaders.
Right.
I mean, it's that sort of whole system. If you dig into it too much, it starts to look a little absurd.
Well, stick on
And
top of that, not just detaining, but I mean, what if they were abused in there while they were being detained? Even though that's illegal, uh, we hear about prison rape. We hear about all kinds of horrible, horrible things. And some people are like, nah, whatever. They're criminals. There's like, no, hold on a second. They're human beings. And oh,
yeah,
let's go back to the fact that innocent people can end up in jail and be found guilty, and people have died on death row that were later found to be innocent.
oh yeah, yeah,
That's a fact.
many
Yeah.
people. And it's worth connecting this back to uh, the notion of guilt and blame,
Yep.
and understanding that while we don't want, you know, people who are engaging in, harmful or
Right.
egregious behaviors to be like running free in society, at the same time, it doesn't serve us to take a punitive approach to behavioral correction,
Right.
because it's been pretty well demonstrated that that doesn't help, and in fact makes the problem worse.
Right.
And I mean, the evidence is in the U.S. recidivism rate, which is the rate at which people find themselves back in jail after being released.
Right.
Uh, you end up creating a cycle in that person's life where there's not a lot of options besides to continue those sorts of behaviors.
Yeah. To your point, it's like, what do we want? Do we, as human beings, do we just want to, like, we have an evolutionary tendency sometimes towards saying, well, I want to make sure they get what they deserve. And it's like, well, that does that really help long term? No, no, that does not help long term. And yeah, getting back to our free will versus free choice, um, even if you hypothetically, whether or not you believe that free will is true, even if you only focus on the free choice aspect, and I know you've covered this in other videos, everything you care about can be preserved, right? It's
Right.
like there's still consequences. To your point, like we're still going to put people into a cell or whatever is appropriate to keep them from harming themselves and others, because we don't know what else to do. Hopefully, we'll grow as a scientifically minded species to go, oh wait, we could do these things, and then it just makes everything better. Awesome!
Right.
Like we could do so much more than we are now. But yeah, if like I don't know if Mr. Harris said it or something, but like if we could lock up a storm, we would lock
You
up the
would.
storm,
You
right?
would.
Yeah, if it was like endangering us, it's like, oh, this thing's gonna wipe us all out. Oh wait, we'll just put it in timeout. You
Just
know,
arrest it.
just put it, yeah, rest it, and just let it just cool down a little bit, and then let it out when it's just a nice little rain. But
Right. And it is perfectly legitimate to defend society from people that would harm it. It is
yeah,
legitimate to restrain someone that has like some sort of clear intention, and they're acting on it towards like harming someone else. Like,
yeah,
uh, yeah, no one's saying, but we don't have to blame them for that behavior. We can ask, what are the actual underlying variables that result in
hmm,
that? How do we address those variables, and how do we eliminate that behavior in the future?
yeah,
And so, if we, to me, this is just like the scientific approach
yeah.
to
Or the
addressing.
newspaper approach, like when you say that phrase, just the facts, right? It's like, what did we observe? Okay, what do we want to do about it? Like, what are the external things that we can observe and external things that we can do to make things better, as opposed to okay, that person's evil. They're evil to the core. Like you're talking about their insides. So it's like, do you really care about their insides? You don't care about their insides. You care about whether or not they're going to kill you. That's external.
Right, right. And yeah, I would be skeptical of like the usefulness of a sort of dichotomy of good and evil.
Right.
Um, you
Sure.
know,
I
uh,
mean, maybe. I remember that thing where it's like, do I care? You know what I care? I mean, I care about, like, we're talking about consequences and accountability and promoting as part of, like, I promote unconditional love, not
sure.
unconditional trust, because
I can
I
see
don't
how that might
trust.
go wrong.
Yeah, that could go horribly wrong. But like, as having a good attitude towards human beings, and this is kind of like an Irish saying that I grew up with, is like, a stranger is a friend you just haven't met yet, right?
Nice.
So it's just that kind of thing where it's like getting back to that well-wishing, loving kindness meditation. I don't know if I mentioned it here in this conversation, but one of them is to stoke that compassion for other human beings and myself and everyone and everything. It's like I can have that kind of attitude and I can still defend myself, and I can throw someone into throw. See what they've taught me? I can put someone into the cell if they have to go into the cell as part of our criminal process. We have so much to
Right,
unlearn.
right. And even the idea of a cell, right?
Yeah,
So like our model in the U.S. Uh, is very punitive, even in just like the infrastructure, like the idea that there
yeah,
should be like a sense of shame connected with being behind bars and things like that. And
yeah,
there's of course a lot of good hypothetical discussion about what you could do differently, but even a concrete example would be what they do in Norway. There's a lot of good examples there about where people who have done some sort of objectionable behavior
right.
are more sent to like it's more like a summer camp like retreat type environment, and they're trusted and they're treated as humans. It's not, like you say, it's not unconditional trust, but they're not taught that they're like lesser than. They're not taught that their life is
Right,
over or that they're broken.
right.
Instead, they try to give them the positive influences that will shape their behavior for the better.
Yeah,
And
they're human beings. They're not being treated less than human beings.
right, right.
Right. And why is
So
that important? Because someday it could be you. Are you
yeah,
paying attention, viewer?
or even just let's take a kind of zoom out a little bit and take a more
Yeah,
like systems approach to looking
absolutely.
at our society. We just want better outcomes, right?
Right. I
We
love talking systems theory, system stuff. Carry
thanks.
on. It's part
Yeah,
of the
we
framework
just
finding.
if you compare these two different approaches, the the hostile punitive approach versus a more nurturing, compassionate approach,
Right.
you're just going to see differences in the outcomes. I can tell you which one's
Yeah.
healthier. It's definitely the one that treats the other person as a human being. And
Mhm.
even if that's not me in that cell, um, if I'm a member of that society, I want that healthier outcome because I'm a part of that system. So
Right.
it's even if you're just one of these people that sees everything in terms of like pure self-interest, it's still in your
Hmm.
self-interest to want prisoners to be treated with dignity and with their rehabilitation in mind instead of just throwing shame and abuse on them, which will only create more prisoners.
Yeah. And
And
actually, life is richer if, like, this again ties into the whole well wishing thing where it's like when you're able to feel compassion for not just yourself, but for others, you feel that sense of connection. And what goes around comes around in terms of like, it's not about the me, it's the we, and we're a human family. And the fact that we can stoke the fires of compassion actually help give you energy and help you be more resilient in times of crisis. Doctors know this. Uh, First responders know this. Like that, they're applying well-wishing, otherwise known as loving kindness meditation in some areas like that, and it's something that everyone could do. So yeah, to your point, it's like may they, those people in the camps and such, and throughout, it's like may they be safe, happy, healthy, and live with ease. Do I want them to exhibit behaviors such that we can reintroduce them to society? Yes, of course we do. And we want to treat them like humans too.
And also, it occurs to me to mention that we just criminalize way too many people in this country to begin with. Like,
I
we
heard that's a thing.
we're a very small portion of the planet's population, and I think somewhere around 1 out of every 4, one out of every 5 prisoners is in an American jail, like on Earth.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of money that's flying around too that's associated with that. The incentives
yeah,
of getting people into jail and keeping them are real, from a monetary point of
right.
view. But like I don't
So
like
we
we've been going almost an hour, so we'll have to wrap this up at some
sure,
point. But
sure. Just
you're
just
right.
to kind of round that out, like we want to improve these systems, but also like we just want to use them less. Like we're just overusing them, and that's just borne out by the statistics.
Yeah, well, part of the reason is when a person is punishing another person, like if A is punishing B, there's a feeling that comes from that for A. And it's a positively reinforcing thing. So positive reinforcement is tied to psychology, where it's like, if I'm A and I'm like, I'm punishing this person and I feel good in that moment to like, yeah, they got what they deserved. Forget that guy, right? Like that felt good in that moment. And so they're like, okay, well, that felt good. We should do more of that. No, that is one of those evolutionary cognitive things that happen, right? Where it's like, that might have served our human species for a while. We've gone way past that. Like, we need to grow up, right?
Yeah. Um, Robert Sapolsky mentions that in his book Behave, that there's I believe it's dopamine. There's a dopamine response whenever you enforce rules, and
Yeah.
so it feels good to call someone out,
Yeah.
and
Got a
there's a
sense of
usefulness to
control.
that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there's a usefulness to that, but it's a limited usefulness, and you can overcorrect, you can abuse that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's relationships can go really sour along that same kind of vein, right? Where you have a controlling relationship,
right,
punishing, over controlling, that kind of a thing.
right, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm actually very optimistic about the future because I think there are certain things that have happened in our recent history to where maybe psychology is now going to get paid attention to more, right?
That'd be all right.
Maybe. And there are other factors that are involved, and like the marketing around meditation is getting better. It's been so horrible. There's a prior conversation with a Dr. Wayne about that. And we actually talked about cognitive biases. So if you ever want to meet him, let me know, because
Sure, sure.
you two, you would hit it off big in terms of like talking about cognitive biases and the brain and such.
We'll do that
That
sometime.
that kind of a deal. All right. Well, yeah. So there's a challenge that I want to leave with you that you
Oof.
can accept or not accept. You can
I
think on
reject
this.
it outright right now.
Yeah. Well, then I'll pretend like I'll set that aside and come up with another, even though it's the same one, because you
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
Oh, hey, here's a challenge. So we talked the conversations around free will, free choice, etc., have implied adults.
Mhm. Oh,
What about
yeah.
the children? What about the kids? So if a person Googles when to talk to kids about sex, you're going to learn all kinds of fascinating things. And so I think there's a market, if you will, or an open space for, well, when you talk about the sensations of being an individual and the sense of free will, whether you believe it or not, um, and then go from there. When do you talk to them about psychology? As
Right.
soon as possible, please.
That's a very fascinating question. I don't
Yeah.
have any answers.
Yeah, I don't expect you to. I think it's one of those things where, like right now, if you Google free will and kids, they have they there are videos of puppets talking about free will, and they are definitely not pulling any punches when it comes to their viewpoint, which is whether they think it's real or not, and then they will tie it sometimes into a religious belief. Now,
Right.
whether that's right or wrong, it definitely made me think about. It's similar to the talk about sex. Yeah, the birds and the bees. It's like, well, what about the talk about being an individual, the sense of self, the sense of free will? Like, I know for my own self, I'm going to lay the facts as I understand them with, my child, right? And say, ultimately, it's up to you. This is what I know. This is what you can experience. And this is what's healthy and this is what's not, as far as I can tell. And here's ways to go look it up yourself. You don't have to take it from me. You can Google these things with safe search on.
Google it, kid.
Yeah. Do all the appropriate netiquette, internet safety, right? But it's like, go, like, science is really important. Go get the scientific data. All right. Ready, set, go. Now you make the decision, which I encourage everyone who's watching this. Don't take what we're saying, as the ultimate truth. Go explore for yourself, right?
Right, right,
It'll only
definitely.
make you a better human being for it.
And I think just in general, that's a good approach to parenting, is to give your kid the tools of skepticism, even when it comes to what you're telling them. And that may not be the easier path in the moment, but I think that's probably the healthier path in the long term.
Well, and they end up teaching you things you never expect. You're just like, oh, really? Show me. Oh, there's been scientific studies that have refuted that. I didn't know that. Like that's a thing. It literally happened. So it's like,
Nice,
okay,
nice.
well, what goes around comes around. All right. So yeah, we don't have to come up with it today, but on Finney helps, especially if we're having a recurring discussion. I'm not saying we are or not, but we have a customary sign off per pair of people, so to speak, sometimes three people. So, like with myself and Corey Cottrell, who I think you know,
Yeah, yeah.
our phrase is community is power. With Dr. Wayne, it's may the force be with you and the odds ever be in your favor, said Gandalf to Harry. We do that in jest, but we actually, of course, are fans of all of that,
Right.
mixing all those worlds together. So, yeah, don't know if there's a custom sign off that comes to your mind immediately, or if there's something you'd want to dwell on. And if we ever do speak again, we can use it next time.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't
I like putting you on the spot.
you know, maybe it would have something to do with well-being, because I feel
Ooh.
like um, understanding ourselves as part of larger systems and concerning ourselves with the well-being of those systems connects us with each other, and it gives us a common path towards better outcomes. And so I don't know what that you could cram that into some kind of saying.
What is
Um,
that phrase? All for one and one for all. Is that one phrase?
I don't. Is that like the Three Musketeers or something?
It is,
I think
but
so. Yeah, something like
it's
that.
the
We could do that if you like.
yeah. So the only thing, and we can actually fine tune it over time again if we meet again. But it's
I'm sure we will.
I come up with well-being for one. So far, I have well-being for one, well-being for all. It
Um,
recognizes the individual and then the all.
I like that. Um, I'm a little embarrassed. One of my favorite philosophers, Peter Kropotkin, has a saying that's quite similar, but I can't think of the exact words in the moment.
Sure. No, I get that.
But basically, yeah, his argument was that everyone is entitled to well-being. So maybe that's it. Everyone is entitled to well-being.
I
I don't
love it.
know.
Perfect. Because yeah, if I'm writing this down, everyone is entitled. Oh, this is getting hard. How about well-being for everyone? Nice and simple.
I like it. I like it.
I'm writing it down. All right. Chet, the Free Will Project, and Finney of Finney Helps. So, shall we try to do it? Say it at the same time on
Yeah,
the count of
yeah,
three.
definitely.
All right, on three, we'll say well-being for everyone. 1, 2, 3. Well-being
Well-being
for
for everyone.
everyone. All right, and scene.
Like it.